Hi, we're Shakespeare Art Studio. I'm Phoebe.
And I'm Phoebe's mum, Francesca. We've been coming up with ideas for you to try at home.
Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Today we're going to have a go at making this little wellness kit. It consists of an eye mask, a face mask, scrunchies, and a matching little bag. In this video, you'll need a sewing machine, although you can sew by hand, an iron, a tape measure, scissors, padding, patterns, hair ties, a safety pin, a needle and thread, pins, and of course your fabric. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a pattern. You can print this off the internet, there are plenty to choose from. And we're just going to cut it out so we have it ready. The next thing we're going to do is choose our fabrics. I suggest you have something more decorative for the front and then something really soft for the back. Now is a good time to give the fabric an iron if you haven't already. We're then ready to pin your pattern on and start cutting the shape out. You want to make sure that right side and right side are flat against each other. Once you've pinned that up and they're matching perfectly, you're ready to sew. Now it's really important that we leave 3 gaps, one at the top where we're going to insert the stuffing, and 2 at the sides, which is where we're going to put the elastic in. So to make the elastic that's going to tie the eye mask onto your head, I'm going to use an old bikini that I found in a drawer upstairs. You could also use ribbon or the elastic from an old skirt, and then I'm going to cover it in some of this lovely silk fabric as well. So the process of this is actually very similar to making a scrunchie, but basically you want to sew a long strip of this fabric, right face to right face, pinning it, and then you're going to sew up one length of it. It's important that your fabric tube is actually longer than your elastic because it will allow for your elastic to stretch and it will also create that kind of frilly bunched effect. And then what we're going to do is put a pin in the top of the elastic and also in one side of the top of the piece of fabric, and you're going to feed it in on itself all the way through until it pokes out the other end. And once it's out the other end, you can kind of shimmy the fabric along and over itself. When sewing, it's really important that you follow the shape of your pattern. When you come to turn it inside out, this will be the line that defines the shape of your eye mask. So the next thing we're going to do is use the safety pin end to actually feed the elastic into the middle of the eye mask, guide it through. You need the elastic to be poking out both sides, and I suggest pinning it in place so you don't lose it. Once you've done this, you're going to sew the elastic securely into the mask by sewing up both ends. It's really important that on the curve you cut the fabric to let it give a little on the seam. And then we're going to turn it inside out, and we're going to make sure that the fabric is pushed right out into its seam because this will create the shape for the eye mask. Ironing is important because it further holds the shape of the eye mask before we put the stuffing in. So for my eye mask stuffing, I'm going to use a piece of this old blanket, but I've seen people use bras before and old shoulder pads, and then we're just going to draw around the eye mask itself and then cut the stuffing out. And then I'm just going to feed it in, fiddle around with it until it fills every edge right up to the seam. And once you've done that and you're happy with the shape, you're ready to sew up the last little gap at the top. And there we are. So to make a scrunchie, it's actually a very similar process to making the elastic for your eye mask, but what you're going to do is make a slightly deeper and longer tube. Our elastic's going to be about 10 centimetres. That's the actual band that goes in the scrunchie. The actual scrunchie itself is going to be made out of a 10 by 50 centimetre piece of fabric folded. And then similarly, you're going to cut that out, iron it in half, pin it if you need to, and then run it through the machine. And basically you're going to have quite a wide inverted tube that you're going to do exactly the same process as before. Feed the elastic and the fabric in on itself, pulling it all the way through. Be careful not to lose either end of the elastic. You want to immediately sew those together to create quite a strong band inside. And then you want to sew up the gap of the scrunchie. And there we are.
Following on from Phoebe's hair scrunchie, I'm going to make a mask. I've downloaded a pattern from the internet, but please check the government guidelines. Take the 2 pieces of fabric, fold each piece in half, and then pin on and cut out the pattern so that you end up with 4 pieces in all. Matching right side to right side of each fabric, pin and then sew along the long curved line that will form the vertical seam that runs down the front of the mask. So after that, open both of the pieces up, pin them together, right side to right side, and then you're going to sew all along the top and the bottom length, but leave the 2 sides open for inserting the elastic. Before you turn it inside out, cut any loose ends and snip carefully into the curved seams. Then, using one of the open sides, push it through. You're going to give it a really good iron and then carefully fold in the open sides, ready to insert the elastic. Because we don't have any elastic in the house, I'm actually using hair ties. So insert them in the ends and then carefully sew them up. Make sure that you go over the elastic several times to secure it. And there you have a matching mask to go with your wellness kit. Next up, we're going to make the bag. Here we have 2 rectangles of fabric, one for the lining and one for the outside. We're going to put them face to face. The bag will be actually folded in half and sewn up with a drawstring along the top. Open it up again and pin the rectangles face to face. Then sew them all the way round, but make sure you leave gaps of about 4 centimetres on each side. This is for the drawstring, but will also allow you to turn it inside out. So we've given it an iron, and before we sew the bag up, we're going to make the drawstring. So like Phoebe did, I've cut a length of lining fabric. You fold it in half, right side to right side, and sew the long line down on the sewing machine. And while I'm on the machine, I'm also making 2 lines of sewing, a few centimetres in from the top, that will become the channel which we push the drawstring through. Like Phoebe did, I'm going to turn the drawstring inside out using that safety pin method. And then once I've done that, I'm just going to tidy up the ends by tucking them in and sewing them by hand. And then we're ready to thread the drawstring through the bag, again using a safety pin. So the final step is to fold the bag right side to right side, pin it and sew it down the side and along the bottom. And then you can turn it back the right way and your bag is finished.
And that is our little wellness kit completed.